Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to actually have a discussion about Don Lemon and Vivek Ramaswamy. You guys, he's running for president and he's a Republican, and you guys know I love political debates. And this one I wasn't actually going to touch on this, but I think it's important because I'm starting to pay a lot more attention to Vivek. I think he's a very interesting candidate, and he's actually discussing some very interesting topics that are serious issues in this country. A lot of things that he's talking about. Some things I agree with, some things I don't agree with. But nonetheless, I decided, since I'm going to be covering a lot of them, that we need to start from what got my attention about him in the first place. And it was this debate he had with Don Lemon. Now, people are talking about the Don Lemon situation and being fired as being racist. In comparison to Tucker Carlson, who got fired from Fox. They got fired on the same day. And I remember looking at both situations. I thought it was interesting. And listen, you guys know my political view. I'm independent, don't really care for either side per se. And I vote based on policy, not on people, not on skin color. So with that being said, we're going to take a look at the clip. We're going to break it down and analyze it, because a lot of people said Don Lemon got fired for sticking up for black people. And why would they fire him for that? He did nothing wrong. You guys, also, I like examining these racial arguments as it relates to within the black community. So when things like this happen and people bring up race, they bring up racism or systemic racism, white supremacy, and things of that nature, it turns my ear on, and I'm actually more interested in hearing what they have to say, because I consider myself to be very objective. And so I don't see the world through color, right? And so I look at what's being said, I look at behavior, and I make my honest, objective opinion. And that's what we're going to do. So let's play this interview. If you haven't seen it, it goes by quick. We're going to play the full clip, and then I'm going to bring context to it, you guys, because there's a lot that's missing. I'm going to point out the games that people play, the wordplay, the propaganda, and the gaslighting, and why this is important. So let's get surgical.
Your campaign slogan is a new American dream, and I was reading through your platform last night. I wonder what you would do specifically to actually bring us together, not just Republicans and Democrats. What does unity look like to you, Vivek, for rich and poor, for rural and urban, for Republicans and Democrats?
That is the right question to be asking. And I think the main divide in this country, and I say this to conservative audiences equally, is not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between those of us who are pro-American, embracing the ideals that set this country into motion, and I think an increasing strain in this country that is anti-American, that wishes to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals. But that's not a 50-50 split. I think most people are in the pro-American camp. And Poppy, I think one of the ways they would say we get to national unity, some people think, is by showing up in the middle and compromising. I respect that view, but I reject it.
You reject compromise?
I reject compromising on our principles. I think that the right way to get to national unity, and I mean this, to unite this country, is by embracing actually the radicalism of the American ideals.
I agree. I think this country has compromised its principles a lot. Other countries don't do that. You guys are just, call it what it is. There are a lot of things in this country that we need to work on. Race relations is one of them. But outside of that, what does it mean to be an American? There isn't any unity. There's a lot of division. Even the states are divided. The propaganda in this country is off the charts. A lot of people don't even trust the government. And there's just a lot of distrust, a lot of disloyalty, and a lot of capitalism, a lot of greed, a lot of corporate interest. I mean, this place is in shambles, and it's from the leadership. It just is. And so I like what he's saying. I think it's very accurate. And when you don't have a cohesive group of people who think like Americans, like, hey, let's be Americans. There's a sense of nationalism, camaraderie there. And sometimes you can't get there without addressing a lot of things too, right? Like, that's also important. But if you don't have that as a nation, then you're divided. If you're divided, you're easily conquered by outside groups. And then you see a decline in morality, decline in those values. And that's exactly what you're seeing in this country. So these are my thoughts.
Themselves. We celebrate our diversity and differences. I'm glad we have some 3 different shades of melanin on this set right now two different genders, that's fine. But what I say is, so what? That diversity is meaningless unless there's something greater that binds us together, that unites us across that diversity. And I'm running for president to revive those ideals that bind us together across our diverse attributes.
I want to get into a few issues, one of them being China. Before I get to China, I just want to better understand something you said this week speaking before the audience at the NRA. Here's what you said, referring to back to 1865. Here it was.
I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party, then as in now, wanted to put them back in chains.
Then as in now, that's quite an accusation about the current Democratic Party. Who and what were you referring to?
All right, so this is where it gets a little muddy, right? And this is what ultimately sets Don ablaze, and they go back and forth on the debate. So let's be clear. I watched the entire NRA speech that he gave at the NRA conference when he went and gave that speech. And the reason why I'm doing this reaction to this is because I want people to understand that before you make a judgment, make sure you watch everything. Make sure you get an informed perspective before you respond. And I think what ends up happening a lot of times is people take a clip, then someone who is speaking on it, who's against whatever was said, they put their own spin on it, right? They then try to create a narrative that isn't true or isn't accurate, and they sell it to the people who are listening. And people who rush to judgment, who are very sensitive, especially racially sensitive, they immediately are triggered. And then people say things that's not true, that's not accurate, and you have a lot of false information that's being put out. And so I want to do this reaction so people can really understand. I'm gonna give my personal take on it, and I'm curious to know what you think. I think these things were taken out of context, but let's dive into it.
Referring to Joe Biden and his expression of wanting to put them back in chains, dating back to Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society was one of the greatest misnomers in American political history, where even back then in the 1960s, 70% plus of black kids were born into two-parent homes. Today, that number is less than 30% in the opposite direction. The very policies that we implemented in this country in the name of helping black Americans have actually been disastrous for black Americans and all Americans. And I think that's something that we need to wake up to.
Okay. I heard no lies there. We have a broken home situation in the black community. We know that to be true. The out of wedlock births are through the roof in the black community, higher than any other ethnic group in this country. It's caused and has created a lot of problems. We can go and argue how we got here. Listen, that's fine. The reality is that we're here now, and how do we fix it? How do we reverse engineer this problem? Right. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, blame this, blame that, blame that. Well, I've worked in the black community for a long time, you guys, and I'm telling you what I've seen. Talk to teachers, talk to nurses, talk to doctors, talk to police officers, talk to social service workers, and they'll say the same thing. White folks ain't got nothing to do with this problem that we see today. This is bad decision making, bad parenting, absent fathers, and so forth and so on. And so we have to take accountability in repairing these issues. And there are some things that the government, local government, can do to help support this. But ultimately, the majority of responsibility is going to be on us, our community, to fix these problems. So he's not lying there. And Democrat policies are not helping. And what I've seen from a lot of these Democrat policies, I'm in Atlanta. Democrat ran for a long time. People throw money at problems, and that doesn't necessarily fix it. What ends up happening is you need a real strategy that actually combats the core root of the problem. And then the money itself that you pour into it needs to be poured into the strategy. The problem that I see is that people don't have a strategy. They think that just giving money to these different groups or organizations or programs is supposed to help, but these programs aren't really attacking the real issue because nobody wants to be honest. But anyways, let's get back into it.
In 1865, you were talking about the black codes, right?
That's right.
Passed, enacted to make it a crime for a black person to carry a gun
Exactly.
in the South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic chains? What are you saying?
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party.
About Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding black Americans back.
The war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular, his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family, where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home. Guess what you get? You get what you pay for. And I think it's been really bad for the black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
Do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox.
Oh, it's fine. We have time.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially consider and using the Civil War to talk about black Americans. That war was not fought for black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for black people to have freedoms in this country.
Okay, here's the first fallacy that Don is spitting out. Vivek never said that. He never said the Civil War was fought so that black people can have guns. All right, so let's be very clear. This is where the trickery comes out. Don Lemon is an expert wordsmith, right? A word wizard. And he will spit some information out in order to confuse you, touch on your heartstrings, and basically invoke an emotional response out of black people, right? It's race baiting at its best. He's very good at it, you guys. He's very, very good at it. What's interesting is, again, Vivek never said that. And so he's going to clarify and say, no, that's not. Well, he's not going to say no. He said, yes, the Civil War was to free slaves. And so you're going to start seeing Don make some disingenuous response with his argument.
Yeah. Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad
but that
part
wasn't
about
fought for black people to have guns. I think.
Actually, you know, funny fact is, black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Black people still aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country.
Okay.
So I think they start having two different arguments. And the argument that Don is going to present is true. But also the argument that Vivek is making is also true. He's saying that blacks could not truly appreciate and enjoy those other freedoms until they were able to get the Second Amendment honored. And that's true, you guys. Regardless of how you look at it, the Second Amendment allows you to enjoy all the other freedoms that you're supposed to have, because it's that allows you to defend those freedoms without being able to have a gun, defend yourself. Then the federal government, the government has a right to infringe on all those rights, but you being able to defend those rights with the Second Amendment is what he's saying. So he's absolutely correct. I think Don is getting into a different type of argument, and they're basically not talking about the same thing, essentially. All right.
By failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
When you are in black skin and you live in this country, then you can disagree with me, but we're not.
All right. Problem number one, what did Don say? When you are in black skin and you lived in this country, then you can disagree with me. Already, what is he doing, you guys? He made a racist statement. He's saying you can't speak on this topic because you're not black. When you are black skin, then you can disagree with me. You guys, that's strike number one that messed up this whole situation for him. You know, people are asking, okay, why did he get fired? I'm like, damn, did you not watch the interview? Did you not watch the debate? You can't point out what the problem was, you know. But let's point out again. He just made that statement. Let me rewind it back a little bit just for those who missed it, because they're kind of talking over each other.
freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country.
First of all, you got to look at his the co-host, her facial expression when he said that. Hey, I disagree with that, Don. I disagree with that. Because Don is saying black people still can't enjoy their freedoms. You guys, that's false. That's false. And at the same time, there are things and there are issues and there are racist people in this country that you can't change that. You're not going to fix that. But to say that black people aren't enjoying the freedoms, that's absolutely false. But look at the co-host's expression. Just seeing her facial expression is crazy to me. But look how she responds when he says that.
Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
And you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned in here that we have three different shades of melanin.
Don, I think we have to be able to talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that.
All right. Don made another statement. He said the fact that you said there's 3 shades of melanin in here. What is he talking about? Earlier, Vivek said there's 3 different shades of melanin in this room. You guys, Vivek is not, he's coming off, he's actually very intelligent. Because she's white, Don is implying, hey, you made a statement talking about 3 shades of melanin. Well, Don is looking at Vivek being brown skinned, he's Indian American. Don is black. And he looks at his co-host who's white, and he's like, what do you mean there's 3 shades of melanin? So off the top, Don is already, he's already triggered. He's offended. You guys, listen, for those who don't know, white people do have melanin in their skin. A lot of people, just because they're white, you know who doesn't have melanin in their skin? Albino people, you guys. White people have melanin. It's just very, very minimum, right? It's not that much. What Vivek said was absolutely accurate. What he said was accurate. He said there's 3 shades of melanin in this room. Yeah, he's right. He's right. Now, if there was 4 people and one of them was albino, he said, hey, there's 3 shades of melanin. And I'm like, well, what about the albino person? Well, technically, scientifically, biologically, albino is absent of melanin. White people have melanin in their skin, you guys. For those who don't know, and so it's let's be clear, the original man came from Africa. Everybody got a little melanin in them, Don. Calm down, brother. Calm down. That's what I'm saying. Some people are so easily triggered. Instead of just correct him. If you feel like he's wrong, correct him. But when you start insulting, when you start disrespecting, you've already showed that you've lost the argument. You've already lost it. Listen to what he says. I'm gonna play that clip back. He's the second time he's dissed him. Right? He said, hey, when you're in black skin, you can tell me about what it means to be, or what it's like being black. Hey, you over here saying there's 3 shades of melanin. He's just basically saying, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. You're making all these statements. And actually, Don, he's, so far he's sounding pretty accurate.
Yeah, and I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
And you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned in here that we have 3 different shades of melanin.
Don, I think we have to be able to talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that
He said, when you've lived in this country, you guys, that's another insult. You guys, Vivek is an American. He was born here. He was born here. Why? Because his family is from a different country. It means he wasn't born in this. What he said, when you lived here, you guys, that's another diss. That's another diss. What is he doing, you guys? He's making racist statements. He's making racist statements. I always say, if you put a white face on that, would he be able to say that? If that was a white man saying that, would he be able to say that? Or will we have something to say about that? What did Vivek say? He said, "Listen, you're doing black people a disservice by what you're saying. We should be able to have these conversations regardless of the color of our skin. The problem with this country now is that people are afraid to talk to each other because we look different. Be in the lunchroom at school, you got the Asian kids sitting over here, Hispanic kids sitting over there, white kids sitting over here, black kids sitting over there. Nobody wants to talk to each other. That's the problem. We say, hey, we need to come together and have a conversation. Well, according to Don, if you ain't black, you can't talk about it. It's ignorant, you guys. That's ignorant.
Compare that to 1865 and 1964.
I think for you to compare it to 1865 and
have equal rights
1964
in this
is
country.
actually, I think it's insulting to black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit here and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong. What
part of the history was wrong?
What part of the history was wrong? That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for black people, only for black people to get guns and for black people to have.
The Civil War was fought for
rights.
black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that even after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms.
To reduce it in a speech at the NRA to say you're making people think, or you're trying to say that black people to get guns, that was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a fact.
You guys, that's a lie. He never said that. He never said that. Vivek never said that. Don, where are you getting your information from? That's a lie. So now he's saying this, and unfortunately, you have some people within our community that are listening to it and are going to defend Don because they think because he's black and what he's saying is true and won't take the time to go and look at this information for themselves. You guys, listen, I got to bring some context to it. Vivek never said that. He never said that. He never said that. So he's saying you're trying to reduce and tell history incorrectly by saying that the reason for the civil rights, the Civil War, was so that black people can get guns. He never said that in his NRA speech. You know how I know, you guys? Because I listened to the whole thing. He never said that. So let's do this.
Even we haven't been perfect in this country. I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party then, as in now, wanted to put them back in chains. That's exactly what they wanted to do. That is how you got Jim Crow. That is how you got to Martin Luther King Jr. being denied his concealed carry permit wrongly by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, just as the FBI today politicizes its behavior against its political opponents today. That is not right. That is not America.
It didn't happen.
Reductive?
It's not
and I think
reductive.
it's insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured. And the Second Amendment was
black
part of
people,
what secured
hang on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that
So Don goes rogue. He's like, yo, shut the hell up. I'm about to get in his. He takes the earpiece out. Look at his co-host. She's like, okay, that's policy 3.75. You're not supposed to do, right? So Don has gone rogue at this point, and he says, I'm about to go ahead and check Vivek because he's crossed the line. And this is where it gets spicy.
black people, say what you said again.
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They
That's
were
a
not
fact.
secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not, you are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to
And you know
happen
how they
after the
got
Civil
it?
War
They got their
and
Second Amendment
Reconstruction.
rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, down the
Okay, so Don is correct, right? Don is correct. Vivek is missing the other pieces. After the Civil War, there were black codes. There was Jim Crow, right? So there was the KKK. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of stuff going on. So what Vivek is saying that, okay, yeah, you're freed from slavery, right? And yeah, so you guys got your rights. Don's like, no, it didn't go down like that. Don is absolutely correct. You know how you deal with a situation like this, you guys? All you simply do is you check them with the facts. And Don is right. Don is like, hey, hold on, you're missing some things because it wasn't that gravy. All Don had to say was check them on the facts. Hey, I agree. After the Civil War, yes, blacks were free, but unfortunately, they were still being oppressed systematically. So they didn't get a chance to enjoy those freedoms 100%. They were still being oppressed because of this. We had Jim Crow. We had black codes. We had the KKK, right? We had the police. You know, there was still a lot going on. Black people being lynched, kidnapped, killed. So it's I hear what you're saying, but you're trying to make it look like it was roses and Skittles after the Civil War, and that's false. Nothing wrong with that. Don is 100% correct for addressing that and checking him. Where did Don go wrong, you guys? Where did Don go wrong? But then also when you really flip it, what Vivek is also saying is that, well, blacks couldn't truly enjoy these freedoms until they got the right to bear arms, right? Because the Second Amendment was snatched away from them. But when you started seeing black Americans exercising and defending their rights, when they're allowed to keep their guns, where did Vivek go wrong, though? He said the NRA was a big supporter of that. You guys, that is not accurate. That's not accurate. All right. And so the interesting thing about the NRA is that they were actually a big proponent and gun regulations against African Americans during the time the Black Panthers got involved and were moving real heavy in California. Right, they were carrying, open carrying with their rifles, with guns. They were doing what they call cop watching, right? For those who know what the Black Panthers did, they were patrolling and keeping their community safe because you had white police officers that were abusing their power. They were exercising racism against black people. They were torturing and killing black people in communities. They were violating black people's rights. And so the Black Panthers were like, listen, we're going to defend our own communities. We're going to follow the police. We're going to cite the law to them. We're going to educate the people. We're going to carry guns. They were actually exercising their Second Amendment right, which was their right to bear arms, and then defending themselves as a well-regulated militia. So what ended up happening was the Black Panthers went to I think some like Capitol building or Capitol building in California, in Oakland, I think, and they were protesting because they were trying to make legislation to deal with the Black Panthers because they were making white people in the community or in the surrounding communities and police officers, they were afraid. They were afraid because they were carrying their guns out in the open. They were actually really exercising the Second Amendment as it is looked at today, open carry. Well, the NRA got behind after that Capitol demonstration. They walked in the building while they were trying to pass laws or do whatever they were doing in there. The Black Panthers, I think they were 30, 40 deep, went in the building, open carry, started protesting. And they're like, hey, listen, you're not going to infringe on our rights to carry, to bear arms. So then because of that scene and that display, of course, the media got a hold of it. It frightened people. And so I think everybody got behind it. Legislation like, nah, we need to ban open carry and then require that you guys have people have permits. The NRA got behind that. And so one could argue that because of what the Panthers did and what they were doing at the time, the NRA was like, nah, we think we need to create some gun restrictions. So the NRA's impact on that legislation that got passed ended up disarming the Black Panthers. It was because of the Black Panthers and black people speaking up and standing up and defending themselves is what spooked a lot of people. NRA got behind it and co-signed it. So no, so Vivek is not accurate with that. But after that law was passed a couple months, I don't know, I think a year later, then the everybody started to feel the effects of that being disarmed, right? And then so now the NRA ended up changing their stance and then started supporting people being open carry and things like that. And so, and then they've been on record, and there's proof and record that they've also helped and assisted blacks and black communities and organizations, get trained and things like that. So to be honest, the NRA has ping-ponged around. Initially, they worked against black people and getting them disarmed, enforcing the regulations of permits. And then they turned around and say, you know what? No, I think what the Panthers were doing and how they were exercising the Second Amendment and open carry is absolutely the correct way, and we were wrong. One could argue that the Black Panthers actually educated the NRA on what the Second Amendment should look like, and then they end up reversing their perspective on it, and then turn to they've been documented supporting several black people and organizations on that. So just to be clear, like that's from my understanding based on my research, that's how it went down with the NRA. So any thoughts on that? I'm curious to get what you guys think.
The NRA did not play a big role.
Absolutely, they trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role.
This is just historical fact.
It's
but
not historical fact.
The part that I find,
because you say it's historical fact.
The part that I find insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have a
the
different
freedoms
point
that
of view.
black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without me regarding you as a black man,
that
but
you're
me regarding you
here,
as a fellow citizen.
You're
That's what I think we should see.
Whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me
whatever ethnicity
about
I'm,
what it's like to be black.
Whatever
in America.
ethnicity I'm, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should.
That's what got him fired. That's what got him fired, you guys. That's racist. It's bigotry at its best, right? What do you say? The fact that you're trying to explain to me a black person and whatever ethnicity you are, you guys, come on. That's what canned him, along with all the other stuff that he did. You guys, he got fired for being unprofessional. He got fired for being disrespectful. This was just the icing on the cake. You guys, he's made some disparaging statements to other co-hosts, to other guests. He's been warned. He was given some classes to take, right? And this was the straw. So people are saying, should Don not stick up for black people? Should he not defend and correct? No, he absolutely should. And I think he was in the right direction. But you got to be careful, you guys, and you got to be professional. Don lost his cool. He absolutely lost his cool. And what got him fired was his inability to control his emotions. He got triggered, and he said some things he shouldn't have said. You might not, some of us look at it and say, well, I don't see what he said was offensive. Well, then that's the problem if you didn't pick up on it. Because if he was a white man and he made that statement to a black person, you guys, they'd have been out of here. You know, there's this double standard when it comes to what's considered racist and what's not considered racist when it comes to being black. You guys, if it's not okay for a white person to say, it's not okay for us to say. It's just that simple. I think overall the debate was a good debate. I'm a big component on challenge the facts. All right. So all this, you can't speak on it because you're not black. You guys, with that ignorant way of thinking, it's very stupid. It's almost like going to the hospital and you're telling the doctor that you can't give me medical advice because you're not black, and the doctor's white. Well, you don't live, and you never lived in a black body before, so you can't give me medical advice. As if the insides of our organs are any different than a white person's. So, it's this idea that some of us got color on the brain, I swear, so much that if you were to open up the damn head, you'd see a box of crayons in it. So we got to be careful when we make these arguments. Keep race out of it. Educate the ignorant. It's just that simple. But anyways, that's my thought on that. Let me get you guys' thoughts in the comment section. Was Don wrong? Did he handle it the right way? Should they have fired him? For those who know all the other stuff that he did, you guys, he was already warned. Bless his heart. Professionalism. Shout out to Vivek. He handled that like a G. And so, but anyways, you guys do your own research. Look into it. Let me get your thoughts, comments in the comment section. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And with that, let these truths find you where the lies have left you. Good night. God bless.